All right, go ahead.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, so note phase two, we had over 13,000 points of contact. Just we're really excited about that. Appreciate everybody taking the time. We had shared some just kind of example ideas of what Lyndale could look like in this phase two. That's Lyndale basically from Franklin down to 31st here. So next slide. Just wanted to go over some general themes that we heard based on phase two. Some people who want to see a bikeway on Lyndale, and some people who feel bikeways should be on other streets. You know, generally, we kind of heard certainly safety being a big thing from most people. Uh, Parking, again, mixed feedback on parking. Some prioritizing it higher, some prioritizing it lower. You know, kind of universally, we kind of heard, you know, certainly we want to see functional green space and preservation and the planting of new trees. Uh, some want to see improvements in transit efficiency, just knowing the importance of the corridor. And then, you know, just want to acknowledge we did hear from the business concern about construction, parking. You know, how does the new design um, would a new design potentially impact kind of the operations for businesses along Lyndale Avenue, recognizing that there's deliveries, ride share, food takeouts services, etc. that are, and there's many more uses as well. But just want to acknowledge, you know, there's many different uses along Lyndale Avenue. Uh, Next slide. So just want to go over the schedule of where we're at. We're actually at phase three. We have three different corridor design options available, and we're looking for feedback on those three different designs. We spent our first phase in the a fall a year ago, collecting input, just kind of existing Lyndale, and then phase two this summer, gathering feedback on a couple of different concepts. After this phase three, our goal is to come out by spring of 2025 with a preferred design that we would move forward with. And then really from there onward, it's approvals and really getting into the engineering design and blueprints with construction starting in 2027. Next slide. Uh, Something that certainly we heard and want to, you know, you'll see in the designs. So really the designs focusing on safety. We want to continue to improve safety on Lyndale Avenue. Uh, Second thing being, of course, trees and greening, providing space for trees and greening. We certainly recognize that that changes the context of the street, maintaining as many existing trees as we can. Curb bump outs. So these would be at intersections where feasible, really to help shorten crossing distances, increase visibility for people crossing as well as drivers seeing people crossing. You know, certainly the intersections without stoplights, looking for improvements there to enhance safety. I'll point out we made improvements at 25th and 27th. Our plan is continue to perpetuate that with those pedestrian beacons that are there today. So those will get replaced and included with the designs. You know, if there is a bikeway, you know, we heard certainly the importance of having that bikeway separate from vehicles and pedestrians. So kind of a separate bikeway. We would expect in the designs with the bikeway, we have that bikeway behind the curbs. So not on at street level, but more at sidewalk level. And then certainly what we've heard early on and continue to hear about is corridor wide lighting. So today, just some of the intersections have light, but with this project, we will include lighting along the full stretch of Lyndale Avenue. Next slide. Certainly just want to acknowledge, you know, we did hear about those uses for businesses. So certainly you'll see parking provided where available to. It really provides, of course, that business use, resident use, but also as well serves as traffic calming, also provides an opportunity for bump outs. Also provides space for curbside use and delivery. Also, we'll continue to work with businesses to identify sidewalk cafes. We know where the existing ones are, but certainly want to keep working with businesses further on that. Next slide. Trees, talked about trees. Really our goal being trying to keep the mature trees where feasible, and then also providing space to plant new trees. We also are looking at continuing to provide medians on Lyndale Avenue. These include pedestrian refuges, also identifying different locations to have medians where spot locations, essentially trying to keep drivers responsible, not misusing the center left turn lane also helps calming vehicle speeds. And then finally, green space, already brought that up, but also as well, stormwater. So agencies, as agencies, city and county, we certainly want to improve stormwater. And so that's something we'll be certainly investigating today. All that stormwater just directly runs to the river. Our intention is we want to treat that before it gets to the river. Certainly better waterways for all of us. Next slide. Want to talk about transit. Just want to note you'll see certainly some different techniques for keeping transit moving in this corridor. That's certainly a goal for the agencies as well. Metro Transit. Want to note that you'll see in one of the options, transit data shows that primarily transit delay is happening northbound approaching Franklin. So, if we include it, certainly a transit lane on the table here, northbound approaching Franklin. And then certainly acknowledging Lyndale Avenue is identified for future bus rapid transit that'd be similar to A line, C line, or D line. Not until beyond 2030, but we are working to make sure that we're providing that space for that future bus rapid transit. Next slide. Now I want to get into the corridor design options. Just want to note we have 3 options. Really what I'm going to share with the group tonight, there is a lot of information where we literally have laid out these options across the corridor. So I think I'm going to spend my time tonight really just talking about a couple of the differences, but just want to acknowledge, as we've talked about safety, greening, certainly improving crossings for people walking, etc. Those are all something that we certainly kept in mind as we developed these options. Next slide. So first, want to note that we have identified as the blue option. This option essentially has a 2-way bikeway on the east side of Lyndale Avenue. And that's from 29th Street up to the north end. So that would connect to the existing bikeway that continues north at the Loring Greenway, and then as well continues north, Hennepin, Lyndale Commons area, and north from there. You'll see kind of consistently, we have heard a lot of positive feedback about 1 lane each direction with the center left turn lane. You'll see in the layouts, we do end up with some medians. It shows parking here, but you'll see we do end up with some parking as well as some curve extensions. So just wanted to note a blue option, really the key thing wanted to point out is difference compared to the others would be the 2-way bikeway here. Next slide. This would be the blue option, just continuing south of 29th. Just want to note pretty similar to what's out there today. Focused on greening, parking, 1 lane each direction, left turn lane. Really, we talked about the location of the bikeway, connections at 28th and 29th, getting over to Bryant Avenue, as well as, and so the city of Minneapolis is certainly looking at improving the bikeway on 28th Street to make those connections, also recognizing the connection to the Greenway is at 29th. Next slide. The purple option. So the difference here, was pretty similar. The difference here being this is north of 24th Street. We have a transit lane. So this is really focused on keeping transit moving, of course, and those times that they see Metro Transit sees delays heading northbound. Certainly the thought here being, and as you'll see in the layouts connecting to the transit lanes that were recently placed in the Hennepin Lyndale Commons area by the Walker, kind of north of over 94 there over the tunnel. Next slide. The purple option here, south of 24th, generally 3-lane, focused on greening, focused on safety through the south end. Next slide. Orange option, want to note this is a combination of the purple and the blue option on the north end, where we're including both a 2-way bikeway and a transit lane, 24th Street all the way north. Want to note here with this option, the one kind of impact that we have that we don't with the others is any trees on the east side north of 24th Street would need to be removed and replaced. So that's an impact to just be aware of. So the orange option, this is 24th Street to the north end. And then Amy, feel free to go to the next slide. So 24th to 29th would just have the bikeway. Really focused on the fact that transit lane north of 29th being that's where the transit delays are. Sorry, north of 24th is where that's where the transit delays are. South of 24th, we end up with a little bit narrower street on Lyndale due to stairways, retaining walls, etc. There's a lot of mature trees in that area, so we're really focused on trying to maintain those mature trees while still providing this option, the bikeway, and still providing that we don't get into some of those stairs, really impact the access to buildings and homes, etc. along there. Next slide. And then finally, 29th to the south end, really focused on just that one lane each direction with the left turn lane and greening and safety here through the south end. Feel free, Amy, to go to the next slide. So we did come up just kind of with a summary here, just because there's a lot that I said, but just wanted to again call out the differences between these. So you'll see the blue 2-way bikeway to 29th Street, the north end. The purple is the transit lane with no bikeway. The orange is generally a combination of the blue and the purple. Next slide. So we do have a survey online related to these 3 options. So really encourage yourselves and everyone in the neighborhood to take that survey. We also do have the corridor design options online. For the sake of time tonight, we aren't going to pull those up, but certainly feel free to take the survey, leave a comment. It is 7 p.m. Hopefully maybe we get a couple minutes here for questions. And if there's any questions as well, you can contact me. That's what we have for our presentation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Any questions or comments from the group?
I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Go ahead.
So if the sections that like where there isn't a bike lane, can people legally ride their bikes on the sidewalks, or do they need to ride their bikes on the sidewalk, or how does that work? Like it's like the snippets, like it showed there was like snippets that weren't bike lanes, or am I just not understanding?
Yeah, Shannon. So it depends on where you're at. So in a business district area, by state law, technically not. The expectation would be to use adjacent bikeways or to walk your bike. But outside of business districts, and specifically I'll say Lynn Lake, when you're outside of that, for as an example, that's a business district, then a person certainly could bike on the sidewalk if they chose to do so.
Okay, just curious.
Thanks for the question.
Josh, what was it? This is the Liberty Road? Yes, this is. Feel free to grab a seat anywhere. There's Terry there if you want. Josh, quick question. Is there a map that shows in plan of where the different areas are other than the street section that talks about them? Like the actual map?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do have actual maps available online on the website. Maybe I'll ask Amy, is that something you're able to include the link in the chat?
What would be the website again? I can maybe pull it up right here so that folks can see it.
Oh, hold on a second here.
It's Be Heard Hennepin, and I'll put a link in the chat right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, and that'll show specifically at each intersection in front of each property. We really, for the time tonight, we didn't want to go block by block, but thanks, Amy. Appreciate it. Yours is a link.
What I'll say is it's on the right-hand side if you want to just click into the full layouts. And then you can also, the button on the left that'll say take the survey. And you'll be able to click into the full layouts once you're in the survey as well. Yep, there you go.
It was here, and then on the right, you're able to see.
Go right under where it said Josh. Can you go down just a tad bit for me?
Yep.
There we go. Lyndale Avenue design options, full layouts. If you click in, there's the blue option, the purple option.
Got it. Awesome.
It'll take a second because it's kind of a large file, but you will be able to go through. Yeah, if you zoom down on that, you'll be able to see that it shows.
Awesome. That's great.
Yep.
Perfect.
So you might want to spend a little time on that on a computer. It's kind of hard to look at on your phone.
Sure. No, this is great. Thank you. I'll definitely be looking at it. That's really great.
Good. Dive in. That's what we want.
For sure.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. Did you have something else?
So no. If there's a question, go ahead with the question.
So have you talked to business owners about this, and what's their reaction?
We have started to talk to business owners about this. We have actually gone along the full corridor and let them know that these are available, had a brief conversation. We do expect to have further conversations with the businesses along here. The reaction is generally, I'll say, mixed from some certainly appreciate it. Some would like to see some adjustments, more parking. And then, there's a couple who would also come back to us and say maybe parking's a little bit less of a priority as well. So we certainly hear not only from residents, also businesses kind of mixed opinions, but generally we've heard from the businesses all say kind of in summary, they view certainly parking to be important for their business. So that's a priority for the businesses in general.
Awesome. Others?
Josh, one thing I would recommend, that survey, your summary was great, but like some of the differences between the plans, I think could be more clearly drawn out. Like the blue option is parking on both sides of the street, which maybe the businesses like. The purple and orange option don't. And the orange option also loses trees, which I don't think is clear in the survey or on the website. So I would recommend updating those and bringing those to the open house you're going to have on the 23rd.
That's really good feedback. Appreciate that. Thank you. Amy will definitely we'll talk to the team about that further before the open house on the 23rd.
Awesome. Others? Last call. Anybody on Zoom? Comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, thank you again, Josh, and thanks, Amy. Appreciate you all being here and presenting on this. This is really great to see the progress. And I look forward to looking at the survey. And also
appreciate that. I'll just note the survey will be open through the end of November. Our next steps is certainly getting feedback through then, and then our plan is taking that feedback, and we may not just take one option and run with it. we're still going to look at adjusting. We may take a hybrid of the options or et cetera, and come back to everybody with a preferred option here by the spring. So appreciate everybody giving feedback on this, because the time is now, not a year from now when we've already picked a preferred design. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm going to say one more thing quick before we go. I hope to
Okay.
see you all at the open house next week.
Yeah.
It's on the 23rd from 4 to 6 p.m. At the Springhouse Ministry Center. And that is open to everybody. The project team will be there, and there will be a lot of information, and that's another way you can give feedback.
Awesome.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Feel free to stay on or leave if you prefer, but thank you all. We appreciate it. And join the open house next week. So, all right. From there, we're going to go on to our next agenda item, which is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I'll pull up the PowerPoint here real quick and go through that and share screen. Sorry, computer takes a little bit here. I'm gonna move this, and then this is the presentation. Do you want me to scroll through it, or do you prefer to do it?
Oh, yeah, if you're okay, can drive.
Yeah. I'll switch. These all up over here. I'll go there. And feel free to give an introduction to yourself, and yeah, take it from here.
All right, well, thanks so much to the Whittier Alliance for having us here tonight. We're going to give kind of an overview of the Whitewater Cleaners Superfund site, which is about a block away here, 26 in Stevens. We'll try to keep it quick. There's a lot of history on the site itself, but we'll kind of go over it on a high level, and then talk about next steps and activities that are happening. Scroll down. Yeah, there we go. All right. Ooh, too fast. All right. So just kind of a quick overview. Pollution Control Agency, again, our mission is to protect human health and the environment. This site is in our Superfund program. So the folks that are here today in our Superfund section, again, my name is Tim Grape. I'm supervisor for Superfund Unit 1 at the agency. Project managers in the site are Felicia Williamson, who's online, and Yogi Shadow, who's here with me. And then the site hydrologist is Tawana Slenio, who's here with us today as well. And online is our contractor, Rob from Bay West. So that's our project team that's working on this one. And with that, I will turn it over to Louise to go through site background.
All right. Quickly go through the background of the site. It did operate as a dry cleaners from the early 1900s until the mid 1980s. There was also a gas station at the site, and due to contamination that was observed, and generally we have sites that come into our program via the brownfield, meaning that there is some sort of transaction, property transaction, exchange, etc., that requires environmental due diligence, paperwork, et cetera. And so through investigations, if we do find that there is contamination, it's sufficient and there's no viable responsible party, the site will be transferred onto what is essentially the state's version of the federal Superfund. And so the site was put on the permanent list of priorities in the mid 90s, late 90s, due to tetrachloroethylene, which was commonly used as a solvent in dry cleaning operations. The site, as you all know, we are all from the neighborhood, was redeveloped to the Chroma Apartments and is currently the Hive, is owned by MCAD. Next slide. So what happened at the site itself? There have been a number of remedial actions that have been taken since the contamination was discovered. With redevelopment, contaminated soils are usually the first thing that are removed. Those were excavated. I don't believe they were consolidated, they were excavated, removed, and then clean backfills brought to the site to ensure that there would be a foundation for any new sort of structure that we put in place. A soil vapor extraction unit was also installed in the new building, and that's really to sort of remove any sort of vapors that were coming out from the site due to contaminated groundwater. We'll talk about the kind of relationship between contaminated groundwater and soil vapor in just a moment. And then lastly, in order to monitor the groundwater at the site, we did install monitoring wells. And so those are sampled on a pretty regular basis. Although I think the one plus of this site is that because everyone is on municipal supply, we are in an urban area, our primary focus is soil vapor, or in this case, vapor intrusion when we're looking at residential properties. And then, whoops. Okay, I will turn it over to Felicia to share an update on the current activities.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so the current activities are yep, sorry.
Okay, let me help you out.
What I'm gonna do is real quick is put this into full screen and then that'll help maybe. There we go.
Yes.
Now we can move it for us. Where were we?
Yes.
There you go.
Perfect.
So, like Yodit said, the site's been, we've been working on the site for a while. And so now what we're trying to do is expand the area by doing some additional soil and groundwater investigation. Our goal this fiscal year is to make access into residential and commercial properties to conduct some vapor samples in the neighborhood. So, and then we also will be installing vapor mitigation systems in impacted residential properties as needed. Additionally, we will be doing more groundwater sampling with the monitoring wells that we have established and potentially some additional wells as well. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Felicia. So Felicia mentioned the vapor intrusion, and Yodi talked about that. What's the difference between the groundwater contamination that's out there and then this vapor intrusion component? And so this figure kind of illustrates what happens with a release. Use the pointer here. So let's just, this is a generic site model, but let's just pretend this is the former dry cleaner facility. The orange blob here is what we would consider the source contamination that may have been released. And historically, dry cleaners, again, using that PCE compound, they would, before we had the regulations we have today, might have discharged and disposed of PCE out the back door or in the dumpster as it became spent and unusable. Now that's recycled and reused and so forth, but back in the day, that was a common practice, right? So why do we see PCE at a lot of these former dry cleaner facilities? And then, you know, as it's released to the ground, it can work its way down to the groundwater table and migrate that contamination along the water table. And then when it's there, it can then what we call off gas or volatilize, right? Think of like an opening a pop can and the fizz comes out, right? And those PC vapors can migrate back up because they're lighter than the air, and they migrate and can coalesce or collect beneath a structure, a building, a home, a commercial property, and so forth. And if there's cracks in the foundation, in the concrete floor, or ways for that vapor to migrate, it can get inside the building where people can breathe it in, and it's a health risk exposure. So that's what we mean by vapor intrusion. That's kind of what that term refers to, that vapors intruding into a space where folks can breathe those in and create a health risk issue. Again, in situations like this, the source is typically the contamination migrating with the groundwater beneath the building, and then the vapors coming up and collecting. There's multiple different pathways. They can also migrate along utility corridors. And the map shown previously, switch back, you'll see these colors. Like what do the colors mean? For us, blue and orange indicate properties where we've seen high vapors that require mitigation to be installed to protect those buildings. The green ones have tested it and are below our criteria, so they're considered safe. Purple means we're still trying to get access to sample those. So you can see the large area that we have already investigated and would like to continue to investigate here with the purple. And there's been a lot of work done out here already for that vapor intrusion assessment work. This, just for reference, this building here is the former Whitley Cleaners and the new apartment complex. 26 running east-west here, Stevens north-south, and First here. So again, quite a few properties sampled already and mitigation systems installed. We're trying to continue that work and certainly expand out into some of the residential properties.
What does green mean? Sorry.
Green was they're tested and they're below our health criteria, so they did not need a mitigation system. There's a certain level that we consider safe, like concentrations, and we'll talk about how we collect those samples, but we sample below the building, and if those results come back below a certain level, then we say there's no risk there, right? Because the concentrations are really low.
And then what's the orange on the Chroma building? Is that because it has mitigation, and do the other ones that are purple or blue have mitigation in them, or are they just standing still?
Great question. Yeah, so the blue is mitigation was needed and it was installed and verified. Orange means we know that there's a mitigation system needed, and either it's hasn't been installed yet or it's been installed and hasn't been fully verified per our criteria. So basically blue and orange mean higher concentrations and the need for a mitigation system to be installed.
And the Chroma building itself does not, or
it actually does. Yeah, sorry, that coloring is for our source area.
Yeah.
The yellow, but that also has, as you mentioned, there's a different type of system. It's a more aggressive soil vapor extraction system that's kind of going after the source and acting as a mitigation system to protect that building. So it's kind of a combo deal. That's a little bit overkill for the other properties because again, we're just trying to prevent the vapors from getting in, but the Chroma building, they're trying to prevent, and they're also trying to kind of clean up what's still left down there in the groundwater.
what are the risks of being exposed to it?
Another great question. So PCE exposure, it's a long-term chronic scenario, but certain types of cancer can be tied back to long-term exposure and inhalation of PCE, that specific compound. So,
I mean, is there a certain reason why the limit is what it is, or how is that created? That's my last one.
no, these are great questions. Yeah,
I know what people are gonna ask.
Where do those numbers come from, right? So the Minnesota Department of Health develops those numbers based on toxicological, I should go over that word, studies.
You got it.
There's a lot of, testing that's done to determine, okay, what's considered a safe level. That number is really conservative. It's low on purpose. It's basically a number that like the most sensitive populations, so you think of like infants or fetal development scenarios, that exposure at that level could result in 1 in 100,000 chance of increased risk of a health risk, say cancer or something like that. So they're set really low and protective for all members of our society. So
and that plays a role like in the distance of outreach from where the old laundry facility was to the area of the bubble that you currently have, right?
Correct. Yeah. So again, like there's different pathways that contamination can follow, and again, a lot of times it follows the groundwater in the direction of groundwater flow. But there's other preferential pathways that can happen through utility corridors or specific soil types where it might migrate more through like a sandy soil versus a clay, that's tighter. So that's why you see like it's not, like if there'd be a consistent like blonde moving this way, right? But you see the pattern, it's like there's green and then there's blue. The other reason for that too is because there's different numbers or different criteria for residential versus a commercial or industrial building. The residential number is a lot lower. So you may have a residential home that's blue or orange, but a commercial space next to it that's green. Well, that's because this number, the threshold criteria for determining mitigation and risk is lower for residential than it is for a commercial building. So that's why it's a little spotty, or so you're like, why does it jump around with the color scheme? So, thank you. You bet.
Yeah, I fixed it.
Yeah, it's still going the other way. So I mentioned like, how do we determine these numbers? How do we get the data that tells us whether it's safe or not? So This figure kind of illustrates what we call the vapor intrusion area of concern. So that's the dashed line around, and similar to the map we just had up, right? The blue area is considered an area that we want to evaluate all buildings within, because we feel there's risk based on what we know about the vapor plume and the groundwater plume. So we say, here's our vapor intrusion area of concern. All the properties or buildings specifically within that area, we want to test for vapor intrusion risk. So how do we do that? We go in the lowest level, the basement, or if it's slab on grade, we'll go at that lowest level of the building. And they basically take a hammer drill and drill through the concrete floor and set what we call a vapor pin, which is a brass pin with a silicone sleeve that seals that pin in place and allows us to pull air from below that slab and collect it in what we call a summa canister. And that's kind of the individual in the green there. Drill in the hole and you see the canister next. That's the collection process. It takes about an hour to collect a sample. And they do multiple samples in the building depending on the building size. Then they collect that air sample, send it to a certified MDH laboratory for analysis of a full list of volatile organic compounds, but including the specific contaminant we're looking for here, which is PCE. And we do that if we get a hot sample the first time, we know it's succeeding, and we would proceed to what we call mitigation or installing a system to protect that building. If it's clean the first time, we do a second seasonal round. We call it the heating and the non-heating or heating and cooling seasons, because those concentrations can fluctuate due to seasonal, like when there's frost cap on the ground in the winter, or where there's groundwater elevation increases in the spring, right? It may push contamination up or drop it down. So we get at least two to make sure that a building is considered safe before we make that decision not to mitigate. But we only need one hot one to move forward and mitigate a building. So.
And who's responsible for the cost of mitigation?
Great question. So on a site like this where the state is the fund lead, we don't have the funding to mitigate every building that needs it. We do mitigate what we call homesteaded residential owner occupied buildings. Any commercial building, we ask that the commercial owner mitigates, because if somebody's operating a building for business and so forth, there's a component there. If we try to mitigate every building, then we'd run on a super fund money pretty quickly. But a residential homeowner typically can't front the cost for that in insurance from a super fund perspective. So the state will fund single family homestead properties for the mitigation system, but ask the commercial owner to mitigate. And that's where we run into some issues with access to some, if it's a larger apartment complex and they're reluctant to let us sample because they know that outcome, that can stall out our progress. But we really feel our job is to inform people. And again, we pay for the testing, but the mitigation component is the one that for commercial building that the state would not pay for that. But we feel it's,
For the safety of the users. So.
Right, the people inside that building need to know whether there's risk or not, and then respond accordingly based on that information.
There are no insurance policies that would cover this type of work?
Not that I'm aware of. There may be some environmental type insurances, but most, property owners probably wouldn't carry that, or the insurance. It'd probably be a special clause in the insurance that would potentially cover that. So yeah, that's the sample collection process.
How expensive is it
to mitigate? Single family residential typically is in the neighborhood of between 5,000 and 10,000. The systems themselves, and what we can talk more about that, they're similar to radon systems. It's a pretty basic system. They'll drill a hole in the floor and put a 3-inch PVC pipe in, run that piping up, typically through the attic and through the roof, and then put a small radon fan in. It just kind of creates a little bit of vacuum below the house that collects those vapors and pushes them up so they don't come into the house. But yeah, usually between 5 and 10 for installation, and then the fans themselves they typically last anywhere from 10 to 20 years, and the replacement cost is a couple $100 for the fan. So yeah, I think we kind of talked about this. This is kind of that decision making for vapor intrusion and how we decide when to mitigate, right? And then we expand out. So when we start the initial investigation, we may do soil gas around the whole neighborhood. We get a good idea from where the vapor is located and which buildings need to be sampled. It's more efficient than going building to building and just continuing to step out radially, although that's also part of the process. But really, and we can do that by not going into homes. We can use a small push probe drill rig to collect those similar vapor samples, outside in the right of way or someone's backyard, and then get the same data that we get from below the subslabs to determine kind of the AOC location. All righty. And then, so what's long term? UD talked about some of the what we call remedial actions as far as removing contaminated soil, but we know there's still a groundwater plume down there, and is there anything we can do to remove that? It's typically really expensive and intrusive to address an existing PCE plume that's been there for decades. But we certainly continue to monitor that. We evaluate that risk component and decide, is there a benefit to installing some sort of cleanup system? Now, I mentioned that the soil vapor extraction, and that is an example of a remedial system that's focused on the source where this contamination was originally released and trying to clean that up and get that out of there. But it's migrated away from that area on the groundwater and through the vapor extrusion plume. And it's really hard to get that back out of the subsurface without significant cost and disruption to the whole area. But this is the process that we go through. And again, so we're in the process of delineating the vapor AOC and the groundwater plume. And once we kind of get through that, then we really decide, okay, is there anything else we can or should do from a remediation standpoint to remove that contamination? And a lot of times there's nothing that's really feasible. So it's there. We're addressing the risk that's creating, but we're not able to effectively remove it. And eventually nature breaks it down, right? And removes, and it's a degradation process for these chemicals to break down, and dilution. Probably not in my lifetime will a site like this be fully cleaned up, but that's kind of the process we use to evaluate that. Alrighty, so I'm gonna turn over to Rob to talk about planned activities coming up in tours. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think already most of the activities are already mentioned, but we are now in these planned activities. We are expanded the area of concern. As you see, most of the purple color properties need to be sampled for vapor intrusion, and there are also the orange color properties also need to be mitigated. Yeah, I think so. We are increasing the area of concern by 20 properties this year. We are planning to do, I think, the next. So based on this, actually, we will have additional 20 properties to be sampled, and we will do around 8 wintering wells to be tested for groundwater plume, and for those already impacted properties, we need to mitigate actually for properties this year. The next one. And to achieve this, actually, we need to access to property owners, to properties. So we need more community engagement here. I think we will more collaborate with our alliance and also the city council, and with a lot of strategies, communication strategies, like by mail, email, and also door knocking. And we will also use, maybe from today's discussion, we'll use the platform from our alliance website, so that we can achieve together actually for such, to protect the human health and also the environment around here. And also in collaboration with Department of Health, we also provide radon test kits for the properties, for those proposed properties. Yeah, thank you. I will give it to Judith.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have you guys websites and also just continue discussion with Maggie. She can add it to our website. I think this is really great. I can also see, I got the issue with some folks who have the larger developments, right? It can be very costly for them to mitigate. And is there a penalty if they don't? And so I'm assuming there is from the state or city level. And so then they're afraid of getting that. And so if there's other resources that could help them, that would be great. Happen. But definitely awesome that you guys do residential too. So
Yeah, we are certainly looking to increase the number of homes, where, you know, we're able to access. You know, simply from a data-driven perspective, we do not know what the full the area of concern is for this neighborhood. So that's certainly one thing that's driving this. But we also want to make sure that we're getting mitigation where it needs to be installed. And so, you know, we found out about the Whittier Alliance. We understand that you guys do quite a bit of work in the neighborhood. And so one of the ideas that was proposed was just going door to door.
and great.
Yeah, and really targeting the homes that have not yet been sampled, that have been, you know, part of the AOC, but have either not responded to requests for us to access, and to just make sure that we can get to as many people as possible. We did have a conversation with Maggie earlier today, and one of the things that was suggested was distributing flyers and then returning the following day to do a door knocking. And we can certainly use, you know, the channels that you have available, whether it's the website, your social media platforms, just to encourage people to allow us to see. And we do also recognize that for our, you know, homeowners or property owners that are renting, we don't provide the same sort of access to installation, and that's, you know, something that we're working through on our end. But just kind of getting to the first step. I
think it's really great for people who are renters to know that this is a potential issue that's affecting them long term. So I love what you guys are doing, and going door knocking and flyering, I think, is the best way to do this, because as a renter myself, I wouldn't know if the landlord got that information or not until I see it. And it's the way you market that information is important, because it is affecting them personally, not the landlord who's there. It's affecting the people who are there. So if the residents find out, they might push the landlord to do it. So there's lots of strategies around that, but I appreciate all the work that's going around there.
Yeah, I appreciate all your help.
Yeah.
Because it takes the community to be
For sure
involved to help.
I mean, to be more aware of it, for
Yeah.
sure. People don't know that this even exists. So.
It's scary if the state comes and knocks on your door and says, hey, there might be something here. And so having, you know, you guys understand the process and what we're trying to do and answering questions, they may be more comfortable talking to you versus reaching out to us right away too, or
for sure.
even corresponding. So yeah,
sure.
Appreciate it.
I'm gonna pause it there since we're low on time, but I am curious if others have questions, switch sides. Does anybody have questions or comments about this?
So where is this Corona building?
Right in front of MCAD. So you know where the MCAD is? It's kitty corner from there. It's actually owned by.
So can this spread to other buildings?
Through groundwater near it, yes. It can go farther too. That's why I was asking about the distances, but you all can clarify how far it can really go. But.
Yeah, again, typically it'll migrate along with the groundwater, the shallow groundwater.
So have they started testing yet?
Yes, we, so that figure that was up that showed the different colors of the properties, those are all properties, if it's blue.
And have they found any contamination?
Correct, yep. So all of the blue and orange have contamination beneath them that are above our health criteria.
Here's a flyer right there. So you'll see Chroma building here in yellow.
A lot of blue there.
And then the ones that have been contaminated are blue. And orange also means they're contaminated. Green means they're good. They don't have any contamination.
And that red, like, dotted line, that's like the area of testing.
Our focus, yeah, correct, yep.
You don't have concerns or beyond that line, or is that?
That's kind of like our current, you know, so you see the green, we call it the ring of green. So if we got all the properties green around that outer edge, we would be down. So that's why you see the purple. Those are the ones we're trying to get. That long blue building, right? Actually, only about the northern half of that is actually contaminated. The southern half is not. So it's kind of a misleading depiction there. But that's how we draw that boundary. We keep again expanding out. And I talked about like doing some soil gas samples that help expand that too.
So how long does this mitigation take?
To install a system? Usually, like for a residential home, it takes a day, one day to install it. And then we do some verification testing after to make sure the system's effective.
And that'll clear up the contamination.
It prevents that contamination from getting into the building where people can breathe it in. So it doesn't clean it up from the soil, but it prevents it from getting into the building itself.
And who pays for that?
For single family residential, the state does pay for it. For commercial properties, the state does not pay for it. So commercial owners would have to install their own specific system.
So yeah, I'm just passing out some things here, that you got that the presenters have brought so that folks can get it. And here is some more, a lot of great information on this, so thank you. I mean, I'm not gonna need all of this, but I'll keep one for myself. Any other questions on Zoom specifically, or people here in person? All right. Well, I'm gonna end it there just because we are short on time, and we have one more presentation to go through. So, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. This is great work, and let's continue the conversation again with Whittier Alliance and specifically Maggie, you guys are in contact with, and see how we can best support you guys, either by putting it in our flyers that we send out for housing and land use, and do the outreach through that, and again, just coordinate with Maggie on that, and we'll be in touch. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Feel free to stick around or leave if you have to go. So no worries. But thank you all for being here. Next agenda item, we'll do the Zero Burn Coalition. Are you presenting on that? Awesome. Do you have a presentation or?
Yes,
To Maggie? Okay. Do you, oh, I have it pulled up, I think. Is it this thing? That's it. Awesome. Look at that. She's got everything ready for me. This is great. So let's post this back and I'll share screen here. All right. I'm guessing you all on Zoom can see my screen, right? Give me a thumbs up. I'm assuming that you here they can. So yep, there you go. Perfect. Do you want to scroll through this, or I could do it? Sure. Yeah. All right.
I think that will work.
Do you want to do introduction?
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and begin.
Sure. Hi. My name is.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
I'm Nazir. I'm with the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. And we are an organization that's doing a few things, but one of them is working to shut down the Herc trash burner, which is downtown Minneapolis, right next to the Twins Stadium. And also working to move the city, the county, the state to zero waste, to reduce waste, increase recycling and composting and other things like that. And yeah, I was asked to come and present to the Land Use and Planning Committee. I'm not exactly sure why this specific committee, but
housing and land use, is
yeah,
just
housing and land use.
Yeah,
Okay.
so in fact, everything that's part of the build form. So this again is part of that.
Totally, yeah, okay.
And you could talk about the partnership with Whittier too. So
Yep. And I do actually live in Whittier. I'm just that's kind of why I was asking all those questions.
Perfect. Am I contaminated?
Red box there. I was like,
Well, I was wondering too. So
this is just our website. And yeah, we have a vote coming up. So part of the reason we went to Whittier Alliance, we've been talking to a lot of neighborhood associations. A bunch have signed on to a petition to shut down HERC. There's a city council resolution that's moving. And there is planned to be a vote on October 31st, the final vote, and a committee vote on October 24th. And so, yeah, would love help boosting that and can answer questions more about that, but the facility is called an incinerator. It's sometimes called a waste to energy plant, which is a bit of a greenwashing term to make it seem like you're converting trash magically into energy. That's not how physics works. There's a lot of ash that's also created that needs to be landfilled. There's a lot of emissions that goes into the air when you burn that trash. Some of the trash is like when it's heated up, some of that heating is converted into energy through like heating a turbine, basically. So yeah, this is where it is. Like I said, right next to Twin Stadium. This fight has been going on a long time. So before it was built in the 80s, it was built in 1989, so it's been 35 years. There was a lot of community opposition. A lot of these people were arrested actually for this action. This is like before they started construction, it was open there. And yeah, so it's been a long time that people have been fighting. When they built it, it was county board said it would be shut down in 20 years. So that would have been 2009. We're now long past 2009. And yeah, you know, it's kind of weird to present after the Pollution Control Agency, but there's a lot of what we've been dealing with is government agencies, including the Pollution Control Agency, the county board, county staff, and at times even the city of Minneapolis, you know, defending this facility, saying it's a good way to deal with waste. Back then it was presented as a transitional solution. That's why they said 20 years while something else is figured out. And also it's like emissions and its risks were really downplayed. So since that time, a lot of information, there's been peer-reviewed research, there's been studies, there's a lot of information has come out proving that burning trash is not safe. It's dangerous. There's many chemicals you can't filter for. The combustion process is inefficient. So you don't always destroy things like dioxins, which come from burning plastic, or lead or mercury. Those things are found to come out of incinerators. A new line that the county has been talking a lot about is road emissions, not mobile emissions, are significantly greater contribution. That's the real cause for why people are getting sick. So this is just a timeline. About a year ago, we managed to force the county board to pass a resolution to create a closure plan for HERC between 2028 and 2040. And now we are working to get them to keep their word. So they did come out with a report. It's not a plan. There's no date. There's no timeline. And what they're saying is the city of Minneapolis needs to state its position and step up to reduce waste because it's the biggest contributor to the trash at HERC. And so that's why we're moving this resolution at the city council, is that we take away that excuse and the county can step forward and do what it said it was going to do. One thing I think that used to be here is, it's not here anymore, but we also, the HERC used to get renewable energy credits. So those are subsidies that go to energy, you know, generators like solar, wind, and the incinerator industry managed to like insert itself and get them diverted to trash burning. So other states have stopped that. New York has stopped that. New York never allowed it. Maryland stopped it, but Minnesota, the 7 incinerators in Minnesota get renewable energy credits, except for HERC, because we kicked them out in 2023.
What type of renewable energy credit?
What type of
Yeah,
credit?
what is it? A carbon offset? Is it some other?
It's not a carbon offset. It's just like if you generate renewable energy, you know, you can sell that into like a wholesale market, and it can be used to offset. It can be used to offset carbon emissions, but also if you have like renewable energy commitments in a state, it can be used to meet those, if that makes sense. So it's purchased usually by other market entities. So yeah, HERC is built in a community that is very polluted. most of y'all probably know North Minneapolis has a lot of sources of emissions. These are some, so yeah, I don't know if folks are familiar, but in 2023, we also passed a clean energy law that said the state had to get to 100% clean energy by 2040. Carbon-free energy, and just, this is like an example of how things get manipulated. Just 2 weeks ago, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission was considering what is the definition of carbon-free, and they were persuaded to look into whether trash burning and burning wood could be considered carbon-free, which is ridiculous because carbon-free is not like is counter completely, like, you know, carbon is wood, carbon is trash. And so the way that they're justifying that is saying, you know, the other, if we didn't burn it, the other alternative would be worse for the environment. So letting wood rot on the forest floor or sending it to a landfill. But this law was explicitly designed, and so there are many legislators who wrote a letter during this process saying it was designed to not enable that. And then, yeah, if you look on the county website, you'll see a lot of information that makes it look good. So one of the reasons I got involved in this in about 2019 was a whistleblower came to us with some pretty serious concerns. We did a bunch of data requests, and everything he's told us has been proven to be accurate. So he told us there's violations. We did data requests for violations. This is an example of one of the violations. The mercury filter was not in operation. The regulator wasn't notified. Told us there are really serious injuries that are happening at this facility. You can imagine burning 1,000 tons of trash every day at thousands of degrees, that's dangerous for workers to operate, to fix or address problems. So 2 people were severely injured in 2019. Someone was almost killed in 2017, but they haven't given us that information. It's been hard to get that request back. These are some of the things that come from an incinerator. It is one of the biggest emitters in Hennepin County. There's things here that there's no other source of emissions. For example, dioxins and furans come from burning plastic. So when the county claims that, or the Pollution Control Agency claims that HERC doesn't, the road emissions are much worse than what they call like point source emissions, facility emissions. They don't account for, they simply do not account for types of emissions that don't come from cars. And also common sense, there are other parts of the county that are have just as much highway density as North Minneapolis, but we don't see the health outcomes we do in North Minneapolis. This is, yeah, there's a lot of deaths actually attributable to air pollution.
Is the incinerator actually in North Minneapolis?
It's right on the border. So 55411 is like adjacent to, okay. So it's just over the highway. It's technically downtown.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so it is technically downtown.
Technically downtown. Yep. Okay. Yeah. But it's, you know, and the air emissions or the wind patterns send the air there. And it's downwind about half the year. The other half of the year, South Minneapolis, especially East Phillips and Elliott Park, are downwind. So there's a lot of talk about landfills are worse. That often excludes the fact that ash landfills are still used by incinerators. Also doesn't include the fact that most incinerators are built in poor communities. So across the country, Baltimore has an incinerator in its one of its poorest communities. Detroit had one, they closed it down in 2019. Newark, where else? It's just a list of like the blackest, poorest communities in the country is where incinerators end up being built. So it's not an accident. And in the real world, I think the comparison between landfills and incinerators doesn't account for that real world kind of like issue. And then, yeah, I think something that we have been working on is like, where does the waste go? Because that's always the question. If we're not burning it, where is it going to get sent to? And so we have become very involved and invested in like this framework called zero waste, which basically means reducing our waste. We generate a lot of waste in the United States compared to other countries. We don't, our lifestyle is the more you use, the more you waste, like the better you're doing. And so how do we shift towards what, many of us come from traditions where we didn't waste. So when we talk about zero waste at the table, we say, go back to zero waste, because that's where we all come from, basically. Just a little bit about that. And another thing about this is that the HERC is extremely expensive to operate. Incinerators tend to be very expensive to operate. They've bankrupted, for example, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The state capital of Pennsylvania was bankrupted by its incinerator. You can look that up. There's a big CBS article about it. Detroit was bankrupted partly by its incinerator. And we have discovered that the HERC, and the county admits it, is $37 million in debt due to issuing bonds, municipal bonds for HERC's repairs. Because it's an old incinerator, things are starting to fall apart. So this should, concern those interested in the built environment. We're pouring money to keep this facility operational, and simultaneously the county is claiming that HERC is profitable. So we're dealing with, I don't want to, I tend to downplay it, but I feel like it's important to say we're dealing with government entities that are not telling the truth about this facility in particular. And we're going to have information coming out about this debt issue because the county is claiming that it's profitable, but we've had a financial accounting firm prove that that's not actually true. And then if we had that money directed towards real solutions, that could be going to doing education door to door in communities. That could be recycling infrastructure, composting facilities. There's a lot more we can be doing with that money. And a lot of what goes to the HERC is actually recyclable, is what we found. About 40% is organic waste. So these are just some of the things that could be done if we weren't wasting money on HERC. We had a transition plan done by Zero Waste USA that shows that if we shut down HERC, we can actually move towards dealing with waste a lot faster. That top graph is the county's sort of proposal for, which keeps HERC around. And you can see that we get to waste reduction a lot faster by actually shutting down HERC on the bottom graph. Now that requires actually investing in policy changes, but that's sort of the core argument that we're making, is that this incinerator is getting in the way of real solutions. And then, this is about the decision to close it from the county. The closure plan was released, in February, but there's no date. And so now we're moving it through the city to get the county to step up and act. And this is the resolution. If y'all want to check it out, feel free to. I can share this document after if you want. And then, these are the dates. So October 24th next week, and then the 31st the following week for votes.
Do you have any handouts?
Yeah, I have some stuff.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. This is really great. And I know that you guys came to Whittier Alliance Board before.
And not get those dates.
That's you guys.
No. But we have one coming, and if you go on the website, it's all there. That link right there has all the information. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I know Zero Waste Coalition's come to Whittier Alliance before, and we've signed on to this idea as a board. And so look forward to seeing what's next there. I am curious how all of this plays out after, because I'm very nervous about where the trash goes still. Don't want the HERC, but don't want trash either. So how do we get rid of all of that? But yeah, it's all great information, and it opens up people's minds that haven't seen this or heard about this before. So
yeah, one of the things that we're looking next to is getting money for local organizations, neighborhood organizations, churches, etc., to do zero waste outreach. to reduce trash. I think like, you know, we don't see enough. We think Minneapolis could be a leader nationally. Like we should see signs up saying, you know, there should be information saying reduce how much you waste, compost, make that easier for people to do. There's a lot of little policies they can do. So yeah, we also are working with other neighborhoods and figuring out how to get money so people can do like through organizations, outreach, door to door, have events, things like that. But yeah,
For sure. Awesome.
So
Questions?
this obviously affects the people in the area, in the downtown area.
Mhm.
Does this affect the people in Whittier?
I mean, it's hard to, I haven't seen exactly where in south it's going to, but it is blowing in this direction for about 6 months of the year. So I would say yes, at least it is contributing to air quality impacts. I don't think as directly as some other parts of the city, but yeah.
Shannon, you have a question?
So what is the vote? Like, is it just, you know, like, whatever? Or is it like an official, like, vote to get on a ballot? Or is it, what is the vote for?
It's a vote for a resolution that states the city wants HERC shut down by a certain date. And that date right now is 2027. That's
No, I understand that. But like when we sign, when we're voting, like is it air quotes voting or is it we're voting to get a resolution on a ballot or what is it?
We're not voting specifically. That'll be the city council.
City
That's gonna be
council,
voting.
yeah.
So when you say we're voting, the city council is voting.
Yeah,
And then
sorry.
if we show up and say, yay, 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 and then hope they vote for us. So it's not us voting, it's their voting.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, okay.
Put pressure on the city council. There's risk of amendments that would weaken the resolution. So we want to make sure that city councilors see that the public is watching, basically.
Okay, and then from that point, the resolution or the city council signs on it, and then can Fry just veto it?
We think we have a veto-proof majority, but it's pretty unlikely Fry would veto it at this point.
Good. Okay, that's good. And then from there, does it have to get onto a ballot thing, or is it like that's it? You know?
No, these are great questions. Thank you. I think the next step would be this is essentially Hennepin County's last excuse is that the Minneapolis needs to take a position. So then we will turn our attention to Hennepin County to step up.
Okay. So from the city to the county level.
Yep.
Okay. And then Ilhan Omar and our county people, are they on board with it too?
Ilhan is. Ilhan definitely.
Okay.
City officials, Marion Green, for example, definitely something to mention here, has been very difficult to get to commit to shutting it down.
Yeah, as always, whatever. Anyway, but I like Ilhan. No shade towards her, but whatever. Anyway, so Ilhan's our team, and then is there any other district people like at a county level that we can start on, like at our local, you know?
I mean, I think we are planning to meet with Marion Green, and so Whittier, you know, residents would be great to have in that conversation. Probably some sort of town hall with her, or at least like a, you know, some sort of session with her. So yeah, she's under pressure. And she did say when the county passed the resolution last year, that this classic example of environmental racism was finally being dealt with, or something along those lines. So it's a matter of holding.
She's gotta walk. She's gotta talk the walk. She's gonna talk the talk. So we'll just make her walk.
Awesome. Well, I think I'm going to end it there just because we're at time. And have some other general announcements and updates to share with you all. So this will only take like another minute, but overall, fill out the latest new Nicollet redesign survey. And by the way, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Sure.
This is really great. So awesome. Let me actually pause recording.
I've actually been wanting to come to use.
Well, now you're here.
It's like the most, Kmart site. I'm very interested in what's going on there, but
Yeah, so we gotta go more and pause.